Great, wonderful. Awesome. I can probably get started because I do have a long intro, and that way people coming and settling can just come in and join. So thanks everyone for being here. So welcome to the Career Center's event for Hispanic Serving Institution Week, and also it's Latinx/Hispanic Heritage Month, and our event is called Real Talk with Latinx Interns. My name is Shonda Shisaka, and I'm the Career Specialist for the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. I also wanted to acknowledge my colleague, Melody Lim, who's been my amazing partner for this event. I'll let Melody introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Melody Lim. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Career Specialist for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I'll be behind the scenes today doing all the Zoom logistics.
Great. And so I wanted to provide a little history and context as to why we're having this event today. Cal State Fullerton is designated as a Hispanic Serving Institution, also known as HSIs for short, by the U.S. Department of Education. And this week marks National Hispanic Serving Institution Week. And so the purpose of National HSI Week is to celebrate and build awareness of the work and important roles that our institutions are playing to improve access to education, advance equity practices, and contributions to the community. In addition, Latinx Heritage Month is from September 15th to October 15th, so we're a little early, which is linked to the independence anniversaries of several Latin American nations and uplifts the cultural legacy of a group deeply rooted in rich traditions. I know that the term Latinx may be new to you all, and so the reason we have adapted the term Latinx rather than Hispanic or Latino is to represent the identities of non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender expansive people. So Latinx also centers the lives of Indigenous, Brazilian, and other non-Spanish speaking people in this celebration. As for myself, I am a Mexican from my mother's side and Japanese on my father's side. My identity, I really do believe that identity changes a lot and it's fluid, and for myself, it's changed so many times in my life. If you asked me when I was a college student if I would be organizing an event for Latinx Heritage Month, I would have been way too scared. I was very, very shy and very reserved then. But like I tell my students to go outside their comfort zone. You know, Melody and I were trying to think of something to do for this holiday, and so I really want. I'm happy today to be stepping out of my own comfort zone to put on this event with Melody, and I really appreciate all of you for attending and being part of this event. So let's get started. Melody will be helping me with monitoring the event, and we'll be asking a series of questions to our student panelists and allow each guest to respond with their to the question. We even have some questions for the audience too that you can also participate in the chat because we'd love to hear your experience also. So the plan is to have the panelists share their stories from now till 4 p.m. and then we'll offer breakout rooms where if you have a specific question for one of the panelists, you can go into that breakout group to ask them more specific questions. Great, so we will get started today, and we'll actually, let me see in the chat where I think we'll have making sure people check in, which Melody is now putting the link in the chat box. Also, you could do it through the chat link for students here. Any staff or faculty, you don't need to check in. Also on our screen, we have a QR code that you can also scan on your phone as a way to check in for this event. This event is being recorded. And for all of you who are attending, because I know some people usually ask, they may leave early and want a copy of this, we can share with you, a copy of their recording and, a contact information of our guest if you'd like to ask questions later on. We also noticed in the registration, there were some questions about like how to find internships and things like that. So in our follow-up email, we will send you some resources relating to finding internships, how to see the Career Center and so forth. So for this presentation, we just ask you all to keep yourself on mute so we don't have any noise in the background. And let's get started. So the first question will be, if each guest can introduce who you are, how do you identify, and if you would like to honor or dedicate to someone for being here today. And we'll start with Elisa and then go with Anayeli and then Luis.
So hi, my name is Elisa Hernandez. I go by she, her pronouns. I have a mixed heritage of, I'm Hispanic on my father's side, and then various European origin on my mother's side. And I know a lot of people have, different feelings on some of that, but that kind of mixed origin has really helped me in my finding my path, and my family has been a huge help in that success. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Hi, my name is Anayeli. And then my pronouns are she, her, ella. I identify as Mexican American, so my parents are from Guerrero, Mexico. I am here from Santa Ana, California, so I'm very local to the OC. And I'd like to honor my parents for me being here. They immigrated about 30 years ago. So I think it just has been a long time for them to be here, and kind of given me new experiences and stuff. So yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Luis Munguia. My pronouns are he, him, his. I identify as Mexican, so my family and I immigrated here to the United States when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I would like to really thank my mom for all the sacrifices she's made. Even before we migrated here to the United States, she has done so much for me, my sister, and our family, so yeah.
Thank you all. The next question is, what is your academic background, such as your major and year in school? And what internships have you participated in, and some of your career or life goals?
So I am an undergraduate biological science student. My concentration is in ecology and evolutionary biology. I've only completed one internship this summer. So it just ended like a couple months ago. And that was through the National Park Service and the Latino Heritage Internship Program. I worked as the wildlife biology intern at Cabrillo National Monument, which is down in San Diego. So that was a short experience in a field I want to go into. I'm very interested in conservation research and ecology, biology broadly. I mostly worked with herpetofauna, which was reptiles like lizards and snakes, and amphibians like salamanders. So that's what my internship was in, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly what kind of system or organism I'm most interested in researching. But broadly, my passion is definitely for conservation, and I'm hoping to do some more research in the future in that field.
Okay. So my major is business with a concentration in marketing. I'm a fifth year. I actually finish up this fall. And then for internships, I've done it in the past and I'm doing it this semester as well. I'm currently a sports marketing intern on campus with Titan Athletics. So that's fun. And then career and life goals. I want to say move towards or align with kind of going into the nonprofit work within marketing, specifically with marginalized communities, or kind of underserved communities, or potentially even going later on into kind of the sporting industry within marketing, and eventually becoming like a VP of marketing in the future.
So for me, I actually already am in graduate school, but when I was at Cal State Fullerton as an undergraduate student, my academic background was in sociology with an academic concentration in social inequalities. And then after now to current time, I'm doing a Master's of Science in College Counseling and Student Development. So that's what I'm studying right now. I'm also an intern at like multiple other colleges, and one of the most current ones is at Citrus College. I'm a guided pathways counseling intern. So very like counseling oriented.
Great. And Luis is actually one of our interns at the Career Center too. Thank you all. And then the next question is, and actually this will be a question that for our audience members, you're also invited to answer in the chat if you'd like to. How did your support system, such as your family, friends, and community, influence your career choice? And how did they receive it?
So I don't know if this was a common experience for a lot of people of Hispanic origin, but when I started school, my parents said, all right, we're paying for you to go to college, pick doctor or lawyer. And so I was like, okay, I guess. So I started on the doctor route. And then I got to my community college and I was like, I don't like this. I found that I was actually really passionate about ecology and conservation and being outside and doing science. So I had to break the news to my parents that I wasn't planning on getting my MD. I instead wanted to do a different kind of biology. And that was an experience. But they, over the years, have come to really support my decision as I showed them like different opportunities I could have. And they have always said, you know, we didn't do this, we didn't go to college, we don't know how to help you, but we're here for you to support you every step of the way we can. And that has been instrumental in my journey. It's taken me a little longer to get here than I originally planned, but I definitely couldn't have done it without my family being able to stand behind me and be like, we're here for you, whatever you need, even if they didn't even know what they were offering at that time. So yeah.
I think for me, kind of career choice wise, I think overall my parents really support me in anything I do. I'm a first generation student. My parents had very low levels of education, probably up to like a third grade level. So they don't really know what kind of college entails or even the difference between a job and a career. They've always had jobs. But they really kind of support me in the sense of, you know, whatever you want to do, you can do. So I feel like I'm very blessed in that sense where I'm not being pressured into going into a specific career path. And really being able to kind of go with what I'm interested in. So one of the things I mentioned was kind of within the sporting industry, or going within marketing into that. My parents did see it as like, oh, since you're a business major, like that's good because of like the job that it entails. So they supported that a little bit more. But I want to say like friends and family, they just see it as like, oh, it's really cool that like, especially my friends, they see it as, oh, you know, you're a woman, and you're going into sports. Like that's really cool. There aren't enough women in the sports industry, or even women of color. So they just fully support it. And they always tell me like, you know, even though it is male dominated and a little bit more of dominated into the sectors of like the whites as opposed to the people of color, you know, you could do it. Don't let that kind of, you know, hinder you or, you know, kind of make it so that you kind of start questioning yourself. Like, don't do that. Everyone just fully supports you, which I think is like really, really great.
So for me, my mom was always like super supportive about everything that I wanted to do, as long as I always kept focused towards my education and kept focused and on the path of higher education. That's something that she really emphasized for me. So in terms of career, she was always supportive as to like what I wanted to do. And I was very lucky and really blessed that I knew that I wanted to be a counselor from my first, you know, year at college. I went to my local community college and I was part of the EOP program there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the program. But essentially the programs helps really marginalized student populations that need the extra support, the above and beyond support. So for me, that program really changed my entire perspective as to the specific area in counseling that I wanted to go into. And of course, my mom and my family were super supportive of what I wanted to do, even if that entailed me staying in school longer. Like they knew from a very, you know, early time that I needed to go to graduate school to become a counselor. I think they were more for me. They were a little bit more shocked when I decided to take kind of a gap year after graduation from Cal State Fullerton to pursue work in like nonprofit like organization, more in the political sense. But they were still always like supportive and encouraging. And I mean, they knew that I've been after my passion, which is counseling, for a really long time. So they knew that I would come back to it. And when I did eventually, they were always a great resource and support to me. Even though my mom didn't go to college, my mom actually didn't graduate high school either. So they were very supportive within their own, you know, space. Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks for people responding in the chat. You're definitely welcome to comment on your own thoughts on that question yourself. The next question will be, describe your approach to the internship search process, such as how to find it, how that process was actually getting that internship, and what made you successful in getting the internship.
So I actually don't think I did it the right way, which sounds weird, I think. So I didn't decide that I wanted to get a summer internship until like the last week of winter break before, which was kind of cutting it close, especially for asking for letters of rec for a lot of the opportunities that I was looking at. But when I started going and I kind of lit a fire under myself to start really searching, really applying, I started off with general search engine types like Pathways to Science, and started looking on there, typing in everything from ecology to generally biology. I think I searched for like wildlife biology or like organism biology. And eventually I enlisted the help of my research mentor on campus, who was instrumental in helping me find the internship I applied for. He had actually been sent a opportunity to his email and had forwarded it to me and like, hey, this sounds like something you'd be interested in. And so I ended up applying for it, and it took a lot of different things that I wasn't I think prepared for. So like I had to hurriedly write a personal statement. I had to reach out to a couple different people for letters of recommendation, and they had lots of different questions that I need to write short answers to. So I think I had like a month and a half for the internship I actually ended up getting to get the whole application underway. So in hindsight, I would definitely recommend starting early to look for opportunities. But I think what really made me successful was I was really passionate about the projects that I was applying for, and I tried really hard to convey that in my applications and in my personal statements. And I felt that I also had really strong connections with the professors that I asked letters of recommendations for. And I feel that they were able to write me really strong recommendations, which I think was also important, because when I got to my internship, they told me, you know, hey, this is a super competitive process. We are very excited to work with you. And I think that, yes, I had some experience in the areas they wanted, but also because I was so excited about what I was going to be working on, they were equally excited to work with me.
All right, for me, kind of an internship searcher process, what I initially would do and still do now is kind of go do the CSCF Titan connections, sending it through my portal and kind of using that resource. And then from there, narrowing it down to like my major, even though there are like a lot of them out there, things that would genuinely interest me, as well as doing so on LinkedIn, kind of using the keywords of the locations. I thought that it would have been more helpful for the CSCF connection because I really thought something on campus would be a little bit more helpful towards me. And I thought it would be a really great way to gain experience. The way I found my specific internship was I actually found it on social media, which is really funny. I had seen a posting about it. I reached out to I think it was a director of marketing for the athletics, emailed them, got in contact with them, and then we set up an interview because there was an interview process for it. And then from there, I guess what really made me successful in actually getting the internship is to some sense preparing, really reading the descriptions on what I was going to do, what was expected, what I'd be learning, and also just taking what I know and having the knowledge from my classes because it aligned with marketing. Just being able to, really prepare and have the questions I needed and kind of demonstrate that, I was an ideal candidate for this, and then ultimately getting that internship.
For me, as an undergraduate student, I got my first internship, which at the time was called a fellowship, a little bit different than an internship, but I got it through basically like networking. I was taking a philosophy class, which is an elective class for me. It was on campus at Cal State Fullerton, and I remember sitting down, and I really didn't like the class, but I remember sitting down with this one peer that I barely even knew, and she took a glance at my laptop, and she's like, "Oh, you're like super organized." She's like, "Would you be like interested in getting a position as a fellow in basically an organization that's focused towards community organization?" And at the time I was like, okay, like let's see about it. Like she invited me to volunteer for like a day, and I really enjoyed it. And that's how I got my first position, because I know the application pool was super competitive. So she was kind of the person that advocated for me with her supervisor. By the time I had already interviewed, they already knew who I was. So I was really lucky and blessed to have known her. And I met her through an elective class, you know? So that just goes to show you the power of networking. That was in person. There's different ways to like network now online using LinkedIn, which is like the favorite tool that I use for like everything in terms of like networking. For my graduate journey, I guess now, I would say that the way that I've approached graduate internships at the graduate level, it's a little bit different, because I think it's a combination of having a really strong resume, a strong cover letter, which the Career Center is here to help you with that, and knowing how to reflect back on your experiences. Like what makes you passionate about the field that you are going into, whether it's counseling, whether it's something completely different, like what makes you uniquely passionate, what makes you uniquely qualified to be chosen for an internship that may have hundreds of other, you know, qualified applicants that are applying to the position. So knowing yourself, knowing your passion, having strong application documents, those are always, you know, great things to have when you're looking into different internships. And that's worked for me so far. Like I said, I'm working at Citrus College as an intern there. I've worked at, you know, a handful of other colleges, at Chaffey College as a success coach and a success guide, counseling apprentice. I've worked at Los Angeles Harbor College and the Los Angeles Community College District for like various roles as well. So as long as you know your passion, what makes you, what really fuels your passion for this field, and what makes you an outstanding student affairs professional in my case, as long as you know that, and as long as you know yourself, you should be pretty golden for anything that you set your eye into.
Everyone, and thanks for people commenting in the chat. So for myself, I've seen great interns, and I've also seen people who weren't so great at their internships. So I wanted to ask you all, what did you do to be successful in your internships?
So I think it's super important to be well organized, especially because internships are basically how I think of them, like trial run careers. And you're expected to perform in a professional environment, and that can be a little stressful. At least it was for me. But I think something that really helped me be successful was I had a really open line of communication with my supervisors. I had very clear expectations of what I wanted from them and what they wanted from me, which I think was super important, because I felt that I could ask them, like, hey, I know we said that I would have this done by today, but I'm really struggling with this part of the code, and I don't think I'm going to have it ready. That honesty of like self-accountability really, I think, helped with managing the bulk of my project, because I had to manage for like field surveys, but I also had to work with like my old existing data set, but I had a huge presentation coming up. So there was a lot of moving pieces, and staying on top of what I needed to do and holding myself accountable for the things that I needed to do was super important, especially knowing like I'm here because I want to be. I'm here to get something out of this and give something back. So I just kept trying to keep myself motivated and like, this is a super cool opportunity. This is what I want to do. You know, how can I get the most out of this? So yeah, a little wide range answer, but that's what helped me.
For me, I think like the one thing would be communication, or communicating well, or at least trying to do so. I think for me, I kind of work with a team of about 8 others. So it's not just me doing things individually, it's me doing things with others while games are going on at school. So there's this also dependence. And I always say, or something I firmly believe in, is people don't really know that, you know, you need help unless you say something. So once you say something and say, hey, like I need help, or I don't understand this, people are more than happy to help you. But they won't know that until you say something or you communicate that. So communication in all ranges. I think that's something that I do. And it's proven, at least for me, to be successful and to get the help that I need and to have things running smoothly, especially when things are very fast paced. That's the one thing that I think helps me be successful in my internship.
For me, I would say like, don't be afraid to take on challenges. Even if you may feel a little bit uncomfortable doing a certain type of work because you haven't done it in the past, or you don't have a lot of exposure doing that particular task, don't be afraid to take on a challenge. I think what has made me, what I believe to be like a good intern at all of my previous roles, is that I wasn't afraid to take on new projects or, go above and beyond for the work that I was doing. That I really make sure to impress my supervisors in every possible way that I could, so that they know that they can rely on me. Because eventually, when you finish your internship, you're going to be requesting either a letter of recommendation or a good reference. So if you want them to provide that to you, and to write amazing letters of recommendation, give them a reason, give them things to write about. Do projects above and beyond of what they're asking you, take on new challenges. And it can be scary. I can tell you all that. When I was a Cal State Fullerton and I was, brand new to the field of work and internships, it was intimidating, right? To do some of the things that, some of the projects that they were asking me to do, a lot of public speaking, which at the time I didn't feel 100% comfortable doing. But I knew that for me to be successful really in any field, I needed to really master the arts of public speaking. So I went ahead and volunteered with a lot of the events that they had, even though they knew that public speaking wasn't one of my strengths, because I don't know if I shared this with all of you, but English is not my first language. It's my second language. And sometimes the accent comes out, and that's something that I'm really self-conscious about. But they knew this, and they knew that despite that, I was still going above and beyond and volunteering for whatever may be needed, in terms of presentations and workshops. So that's my advice to all of you.
Yeah. Okay, this next question is a little bit more about the various identities and values we all hold. So how have your identities and values impacted how you've navigated the workplace? And audience members are also able to answer in the chat.
So I am a firm believer in like the philosophy of intersectionality, that different identities definitely interact in different ways in a lot of different environments. So the National Park Service is very structured. Historically, it's been based on like military structure. And also it has, as a longstanding government agency, has been historically male, white dominated. And I was in San Diego at a point in the San Diego Bay where you could literally see Tijuana across the bay on a clear morning. And with that proximity to Mexico, I kind of thought that I would see a lot more people who looked like me working there, or sounded like my family, or something of that such, but I didn't. And I thought that was something that was a little difficult to navigate initially, because something that my supervisors were really working on was making the workplace a welcoming and inclusive environment for everyone, especially as my supervisors were two women in science in management positions. That was huge for them, but it still plagued me that I hadn't met anyone who had a similar background to me, which seemed a little intimidating and continues to be a little intimidating. But also at the same time, it kind of encourages me that I want to be that person that I want to see being successful for kids like me, or who were like me, who are excited to work in science and don't have that kind of role model readily available. So I try to spin it as positively as I can so I don't get too down. And like, I want to be the role model that I would want. And I hope that that can help uplift people who also feel the same way.
I think for me, with identities, or the way I identify myself, it kind of plays a role into like the workplace, but also when looking for a job outside or after graduation for me. in the way that I kind of visualize the environment I want to work in. So one of the things I really emphasize or kind of take into account is that diversity and equity and inclusion. I think those three are very important. So like, what does it say when you're going into a workforce and there's this lack of diversity or, you know, equity or inclusion? Like, do I really want to work there? And I really take that into account. But also when I'm kind of working with other people in the actual workplace, taking into account that everyone has different experiences and different perspectives and they come from different cultures. So really being mindful of that and respectful of that, but also trying to understand that. I think in anywhere that I go and even when I'm going through life. And then with the values, I think one of the values that I kind of carry with me is like honesty to some sense. I kind of grew up where, you know, my parents were like, oh, you never want to lie. We never tell lies. So like even now I don't really go around telling lies. And I think for me and even being a business major, it's kind of emphasized or taken into account even more with like your ethical standards. So I really place high importance or high value on those ethical standards and morals and things like that into a workplace.
For me, this is something that I've actually like thought about for a long time. I've struggled with this. I've learned to navigate the workplace with a lot of caution because like I shared with all of you, I'm an immigrant. English is not my first language. I'm Latino. I'm from Guadalajara, Mexico. And on top of everything, I'm a gay man, right? So I've learned to navigate the workplace in a very like, you know, caution sense, because although everybody preaches diversity, equity, and inclusion, that in theory that's great, but in practice it's rarely really seen. I work in the field of higher ed. To generalize the field, not just counseling, just higher ed in general, it's a field that praises diversity, equity, and inclusion. But from what I've seen for my different identities, although they praise that, they don't really know how to treat people that are a certain level of diverse and they have a lot of identities. So I've learned to just ease into my different internships and my different positions and assess the environment and what the workplace will allow me to share with my supervisors, with my coworkers, with my peers. And if I feel comfortable sharing, you know, everything about me, then I'll share my different identities with them. And if it's an environment that is not really welcoming, then, you know, I would withhold certain things about my identities and my experiences. So that's something that I've learned. I have to learn the hard way to really navigate, because at first, in my first, you know, fellowship when I was an undergraduate student, I had to learn that the hard way, because I tend to be really trusting of others, and I had to learn that it shouldn't be that way. Like I shouldn't be too trusting, especially when I'm coming in from different, you know, identities and backgrounds. I've learned to proceed with caution, is what I'm saying.
Thank you, Morgan. Very insightful, and it can definitely resonate with a lot of comments you all shared. This next question is on imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome usually refers to people feeling like they're not good enough or don't belong in a place. However, this feeling leads to people blaming themselves when the blame should be placed on institutional racism, sexism, and other oppressive structures. Have you experienced these challenges, and how did you handle them?
So imposter syndrome is something that I struggle with, I think, on a daily basis. Whether it was from transferring, I didn't really believe that I had earned my spot, even though I know that I did. And I feel like generally the difference between what I know is true about myself, what I know I've done, what I know I've achieved, I know I've accomplished, but I still feel like I struggle with it's not enough, I'm not good enough, has been a constant struggle, which I know is wrong, but I still struggle with it. So keep in mind, my answer is always a work in progress on this front. I really have to acknowledge all the hard work that I've put in. And I'm still trying to remind myself daily, like these opportunities wouldn't be presented if I wasn't good enough. Like my being here is proof that I am enough. And my family has been such a strong backbone for me. Because they've sacrificed so much for me to be in the position I am. And being able to, you know, go to my mom, go to my dad and be like, hey, you know, this is really hard. I am having a hard time. and they're still able to help me, stand back up. And having that support system to lean on is really important. And I think even more than that, being honest with myself has really, really helped. But also I'm eager to see what our panelists say, because like I said, I'm always a work in progress with this. So yeah.
For me, I think I've kind of dealt with this and even still now kind of do so within my internship. Because I do work in sports. So one, it is male dominated. Two, it is mainly white people. I know in the past and even now, kind of within the group I work with, there aren't many people that look like me, that are women, that are people of color. So I kind of see it like, to some sense, I don't belong here, but at the end of the day, what I do, or at least to some sense, kind of have to remind myself is, I do belong here. I could do everything that everyone else does around me. At the end of the day, the work that I do is kind of to some sense going to speak for itself, and my kind of character comes into play with that too. So regardless, just do the best that I can in this kind of situation. Because at the end of the day, be proud of who I am and the work that I do and things that I accomplish. And people will ultimately see the work that I do, and that kind of will speak for itself as well.
So imposter syndrome was something that I used to struggle with on a daily basis. Not so much anymore, just because I've, graduated from undergrad and now I'm in graduate school, and I've learned to really study what that is and how to overcome it. But yeah, when I was in undergraduate, I used to think that I didn't have a place in higher ed, and I didn't have a place as a student and as a professional. And I really talked myself out of a lot of opportunities that were in front of me, because I thought that I wasn't like worthy. And I really learned to navigate that through observing other leaders. So I made sure that even on LinkedIn and professional networks, I observed other leaders that had a lot of the same identities and backgrounds that I have. And I saw how they were leading, and how they were leading entire, colleges, that they were presidents of colleges, deans of different departments. And I was really inspired by that. And I thought to myself, if they could do it, if they could lead, then so can I. And I shouldn't feel like I don't have a place in higher education as a student or as a professional. So that's really the way that I overcame it. With a lot of exposure and a lot of experience, I've really learned to manage the imposter syndrome and really keep it down to a minimum.
The next question is, what kind of challenges have you had to navigate in your internship?
So challenges that I thought were not something that I thought I would encounter. So the internship program that sponsored my position is called the Latino Heritage Internship Program. And I feel like that unintentionally labeled me to where it was like, oh, well, you're Hispanic, you can do these translations for us. And it's like, that's not what I'm here to do. Like, I'm willing to help, but I'm here to do this project. So that was challenging, but it was something I was able to discuss with my mentors. And so it was really nice to have some supportive people there to help me, because even when at the end I was giving my presentation of like, this is like the culmination of my work, I was one of the few women doing like scientific work, which seemed really intimidating, especially because I ended up giving my presentation to like Department of the Interior, higher government officials. So that was really stressful, to say the least, that I hadn't been anticipating to deal with. So like those hurdles were really something that I had to kind of deal with as I went. But all in all, I feel like I handled it well, and I feel that I'm more prepared to handle things like that in the future.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna actually take this in two ways. One of like, to some sense, the experiences that I faced during my internship, a lot of the challenges come from people because you're working with I guess to some sense fans, or we're putting on kind of activities or games. And a lot of the times you have parents with their kids coming along to the games, and there are rules that you have to follow or certain things that you have to do. And then sometimes the parents actually don't listen, or they have a question that you can't really answer. People just start getting mad. And you're just a college student. And at least for me, I just try to do my best. And it's just like, well, like you're getting mad at me, but like, I don't know, you're just not listening, and it's hard to communicate in that sense. So that's something I have to kind of deal with on a daily basis, and I kind of just have to go with that day by day and like keep my calm. But I'd want to say one of the bigger challenges I face is actually within my household, where I kind of said this before, but my parents actually have about third grade level of education. So they never went to high school, they never went to college. So they don't really even know what internships are or what they're for. So I really had to explain to them, you know, I have an internship, this is what it's for. And a lot of the time, my parents wouldn't understand. And even to this day, a lot of the comments I get are from my mom saying, you know, why are you going to work for free? You're not getting paid. Why? Like, well, it's not even worth it. You're wasting your time. And I really have to kind of take it into myself and try to explain it. And even if I explain it, or even if I try to, she's still not going to get it. And it's just something that I already kind of understand because she has never been through it. But kind of going back and forth into the challenge of, you know, I know it's very beneficial in gaining experience and even within college and preparing for, you know, my future, but my parents don't get it. So that's one of the biggest challenges I do face, is that kind of, you know, kind of remarks that I'm getting from my parents because they don't fully understand, even though I know it's important. So it's kind of within my household.
For me, in terms of challenges, one of the things that I had to really overcome when I started graduate school was people taking certain ideas that I had and certain initiatives that I started and certain projects that I was doing. I had some peers, you know, coworkers that would let's just say borrow these ideas, right, and present them as their own. So that's something that I had to learn to overcome. And just to give you a little bit of background, one of my skills is to identify gaps within student support services in higher education. It just really comes naturally to me when I'm able to like see the whole like student experience and see where we can do things to improve on, right? And I've done different projects, different workshops, different initiatives in the past where I just do them and I just kind of, you know, let it be. And I've had, you know, some encounters where some people that I work with claim those ideas of their own, and they go and talk to my supervisor about those ideas. And it was a thing of like, I had to learn that if I'm coming up with something and if I really want to see it through, then as soon as I come up with a concept, I need to go and present it to my supervisor directly. So I would eliminate any chance of anybody taking credit for that idea. Something that I had to learn, you know, my first year of grad school, the second year, and even now, that if I really want to implement a student support service or program or anything like that, even just a workshop, you really need to make your supervisor well of the project that you want to implement, so that they can have your back and they're very well aware of the work that you're doing. So luckily, I don't have that problem anymore, but that's something that I really had to overcome in the past.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to for myself to having a lot of this challenge, and I can see in the chat a lot of other people too can relate to these that you're all mentioning. This will be our last question, and then we can see about questions from the audience, or splitting us up into breakout groups. So this last question is, what piece of advice would you like to share with the audience?
Two pieces of advice. So like I said, I kind of started on my internship search late. I would say don't hold yourself back, because I felt like a lot of times what kind of led me to starting late was my like indecisiveness in my like, am I qualified enough? Like, is this the right time? Versus just putting myself out there and recognizing that I had some experience. Sure, I didn't have all the experience that some of the internships were looking for, but I feel like just giving myself the opportunity, and even if it didn't work out and I was rejected, which of course happened, I applied to multiple positions. They're not all going to work out, but I had to realize, you know, that's okay. I'm just putting myself out there. And it doesn't mean that I wasn't good enough. It just means that maybe there was someone out there who was better, just a little bit better qualified than me. And that's okay. So just willing to put myself out there and willing to be vulnerable about it, I think is really important. That, you know, just take the chance, take the risk. It's worth it.
My advice would be, if you are a student or even outside of it, maybe get involved or kind of try to gain those new experiences, whether that be through volunteerism, through different clubs and organizations, and then kind of preparing you for that internship or even within your internship. A lot of the time, a lot of people look at their internships and say, you know, that doesn't really align with what I want to do. But at the end of the day, a lot of the skills you kind of gain from that are transferable. So it kind of helps you prepare. A lot of the things I kind of look for or kind of say is, you know, communication, collaboration, or leadership, or things like that. Those are going to be big no matter where you're going to go and where you're going to work. And then the kind of second piece of advice, I always encourage people to look for a mentor or find a mentor. You know, a lot of people are out and willing to help you and answer any questions that you have. And I think even in college or even throughout life, that's just something really beneficial and helpful for you, is to find a mentor.
For me, I do come from a career counseling background. So for me, the advice that I would have to share with all of you is book an appointment with your career coach, with your career specialist, whoever's available, to have your resume and cover letter reviewed. Even if you think that you have a solid, you know, resume and cover letter, if you've never gotten it reviewed, come and visit the career center, get those documents reviewed, because that's really where it starts. Have a good idea of what type of internships and jobs you're kind of looking into. And if not, book an appointment so that we can do that exploration with you. And then beyond that, you know, a little bit of a shameless plug, learn LinkedIn. I do have a workshop on the 22nd. So just putting it out there. If you go to Titan Connection, you're going to see it there. It's 22nd. It's the 22nd of this month. And I teach students how to network using LinkedIn and how to make use of the full capability of the software. I've had great success with LinkedIn. My students have had great success with LinkedIn. So I highly recommend it. So that's already when you know what field you want to go into. That's when you already have a solid resume and a cover letter, a LinkedIn profile, and also just come to us for any sort of interviewing prep that you want to do. We have different tools that can help you be more confident with your interviewing. I think that those are kind of like the best tips that I can give you. Those are the things that worked for me when I was at Cal State Fullerton as an undergraduate student. I visited the career center. I visited my career specialist. I attended some workshops, and I wish that I would have been more involved than I was. But just with the minimal exposure that I had to the career center, it made a big impact on the internships that I got and the success that I've had so far. So that would be my advice to all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, Luis is really great at LinkedIn. I can vouch for him. And then I actually met Aniele through LinkedIn because Aniele has such a great profile. That's how I was able to find her and actually ask her would she be joining this group. And then my own relationship with Lisa. Actually, I've worked with Lisa for one-on-one appointments, and as a student leader, she's always invited me to her club. So it's really great to see, Lisa, how I remember when you transferred here and now how much you've grown. So it's always meaningful for me to see all that. I wanted to thank you all for sharing. Just like Melody mentioned in the chat, if anyone does, for the audience, if you have questions, like a general question for everybody and the panelists that you'd like to get answered, you're welcome to unmute yourself or put that in the chat box, and we can take that. We have like a few minutes for that, and then after that, I know Lisa has to leave at 4. But if people had individual questions for Luis or Aniele, we can have breakout groups so you can ask like more specifically about their internships or their experiences. Yeah, don't be shy. You can definitely ask any question if you had a question.
I have a question. Great, this is Tracy. It's for Louise. So I know you mentioned like you're in grad school now. Do you need your teaching credentials after you're done with your graduate school, or are you done there and then you're going into counseling?
That's a great question. So for counseling, there's different types of counseling. There's K through 12 counseling, which is working with high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and such. And for that, you need something called a PPS credential that would allow you to work with those student populations. It's actually the requirement for California, exclusive, I think, for California. If you're trying to go into counseling for higher education, really you can have a master's degree in higher education counseling, or in higher education and student affairs. It's really up to what is available to you and what you're willing to go through. There's a lot of different programs. I do know that there's some programs that offer some sort of teaching credential along with the master's program, but those are more of like the Cal State Elite programs that have multiple specialties, and they have multiple certificates that you can kind of go into. But it really depends on the specialty of counseling that you're looking to do. There's courses beyond your master's program that can earn you a certification to teach if you want to teach in the future. I recently just completed 2 courses that will basically gave me a distance education learning and distance education teaching credential. So I'm certified to teach online using Canvas, but I did that on my own time. It's kind of like my summer project that I did, not associated with my master's program, something that I did on the side. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities if teaching is something that you want to do as well, as long kind of partnered with counseling, I guess. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that was great information. Thank you so much.
Okay, there is a question in the chat about, do you think it's recommended to take on internships that aren't within your major? Or is it okay to take internships, yeah, that maybe not relate to your major?
I want to answer this first because I have a very passionate answer. I say yes, go for it. A lot of the time, even I was like this too, especially my first year. I'd think, I want to major in this, but this internship isn't what it's going for my major, so I'm not going to do it. So I'd be like, no, I'm only going to do it for my major. Now that I look back on it, I kind of, to some sense, regret it. I've learned that a lot of the time internships are there to kind of help you gain experience. A lot of the times you also have things that we major in something, and something that I've learned is a lot of people actually, like, they graduate, they have their major, and then they work in something that's not even related to their major. You find that a lot of people are very passionate about something else, and they say, I wish I would have gotten more experience in this. So if you find an internship and you kind of align with it, or you're very interested in it, why not? A lot of the times there's some things that are very related. And like I said, a lot of the skills that you do gain, it transfers into something else. And it's always a learning experience. Like, you could do an internship, and if you don't like it, at least then it's not for me. Let me move into this side. So you're going to learn a lot regardless of how you kind of approach it.
I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like if it's something you're interested in, you'll find a way to connect it back to your major, which you're probably already interested in. And cross-discipline training is so helpful no matter what field you're in. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, similar to what my fellow panelists have mentioned. I think I mentioned to all of you that my first internship was something that was not related to counseling. It was like nonprofit work, and I definitely enjoyed that. That's not something that I saw myself initially doing, or that was in the plan for me. But the experience that I got from that internship was invaluable. Like, I still think about it to this day, that it really opened the doors for me to be involved outside of counseling. And I think that looking back at it now, the internship had a political side to it. So now I'm really thinking about incorporating that political side into counseling. So I was thinking eventually one day maybe I can be like Dean of Counseling or the VP of Student Services, which is more of a political role in the future. So definitely go for it. If an opportunity is presented to you, go for it, try it out. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. It's just an internship and you can just try another one.
Wonderful, thank you all. See, I haven't seen any other questions. Anyone have one last question for the group? Okay, I don't see anything. So thank you all for attending. I guess we can try to do the breakout room option for Luis and Aniele. And again, if people need to head out, you're definitely welcome to, and we can send you all like recording and contact information and resources and things like that. Let me try the breakout group. Let me rename.